Okay, I'm just going to draw a hand and a foot here and just kind of show you what I am looking for when I deal with hands and feet, how I might go about breaking them down, and hopefully this will add to other things you've seen from other artists on how they break them down. And you'll notice that I tend to follow the procedure that we've gone over in class so far. So I work from gesture through structure and massing and proportions, and then I look for a nice contour line. I use straight line block in. All right, so let's just start with this hand. One thing I'm looking for in this hand is that the hand is kind of a flat pad. It's like a rectangle. If I ignore the fingers and the thumb, it's just kind of this rectangular shape. And in this particular pose, I can see it generally like this. Now I'm drawing rather light, so you may not see it right at first, but as I go, it'll show up better and better. All right, so I have a square here, like a rectangle, but the hand is coming towards me a little bit, so I can see kind of this in-between flatness between the fingers, kind of like that. I don't see a lot of this side of the hand. I don't even see a ton of that side of the hand, though I do see a little blob of skin there and a blob of skin up here, which I'll get in here in a minute. But I can definitely see this front face, so I'm making sure that's in. And then I always like to say, before I get much further, I always like to say, if you want a good hand, get a good wrist. So if your wrist is weird and doesn't work, then your hand is going to have a harder time working. So I'm going to get this wrist in right now as well. So right from about here on the hand, the wrist actually drops down. Okay, before I get too much further here, I'm just going to take a couple of quick measurements just to see if I'm roughly close. So I've got a general width of my hand if I don't include the thumb. I have a width of my wrist up here and sort of a width of where the knuckles are going to land and a distance here. So I'm just going to double check those and make sure they all seem to be checking out. That might be a little thick. I'm going to use this negative shape here just to help me out. I'm not being super specific yet. I'm just getting that negative shape in. All right, where are my knuckles going to be? They're going to be in a diagonal line, and I think this line may be a little low. I'm going to move it up just a bit. There's like a triangle. I'm not dealing with the thumb necessarily. I'm thinking about this kind of boxy triangle in my hand here. You can see it from the back nicely. There's like these tendons fan out. I've got a little bit of skin here and kind of this triangular piece here. I'm going to see if I can get that represented. Where would the knuckles be? Well, going with that middle finger knuckle first. And they kind of sit on the top of the front of this. If my hand is a box, they kind of sit right here up on this top corner almost. And here I can see a tendon sort of headed back towards the wrist. And this one too. And to a lesser extent that one. I'm just dealing with these as a group for right now. I'll adjust that in a minute. Pinky kind of blows out to the side here, coming at me. And the thumb rides down next to this index finger. So I found these knuckles sort of for the top of the hand here. I'm just going to find the next ones and the next ones, because if I look at my hand, these are all kind of in a row, kind of this arcing row. These are all in an arcing row, and these are all in an arcing row, kind of getting more and more drastic as they go. So if I find this knuckle, I can find the next one. I can kind of relate these to each other along an arc. And this pinky's sticking up at me, so it's a big jump up to the knuckle of the pinky. The end of the pinky is really close to that knuckle, so the pinky's coming towards me, so everything tends to stack on itself. It's not sticking straight up like that. As it comes towards me, we get that foreshortening. The rest of these, they're coming slightly towards me, but not as drastically. I'm going to use a straight line block in to describe the things now, and then I'll come back with, I got started on a bit of a harder contour there. I'm going to hold on that. I'm going to get some straight line block in stuff in, and then I'll come back and add those contours in when I feel more comfortable with them. I'm looking at this. If I pretend there are no fingers and just look at this pad, there's almost a continuous run of that pad all the way along. So I think I might just put that arc in, and I'll need to keep track of it so I can get these little bits of this front pad of the hand I can see through the fingers. That's a really nice overlap to get. I'm always looking at what is getting the overlap. So here, this middle finger is getting the overlap on this ring finger. They're kind of meeting here, and that overlap goes this way. This birdie finger is significantly longer than that finger, so I'm going to make sure I get that. At this point, I've got the overall structure of this hand in. Stuff is still subject to change, like this feels a little bit wide to me. I'll be sure to check that here in a bit just to make sure maybe this stuff needs to get tucked in. But things are close, and I just need to make sure I don't miss the overall stuff that's happening, like these fingers are spaced apart, and you can see this gap between them. Let's add some gestural indication of the detail that's here just to make me feel a little bit better about things. I'll come back and get some specifics on that here in a bit. Okay, now I'm going to come through and be a little bolder with my contours and my overlaps. These knuckles are nice because with just a circle and some lines passing through like that, you'll get something that feels very knuckle-like pretty quickly, and it can help guide what you do with your contours. Now I'm starting to think about this contour line. These wrinkles are really nice for this part of the pinky. That tendon is pulling on the skin there, so it's a good opportunity for some wrinkles. I always look for an excuse to add these side contours, so there's like the silhouette edge of the finger. And then there's this secondary contour. It's kind of like edge of finger, then edge of knuckle, edge of finger, edge of knuckle, that kind of stuff. And then if I wanted to get fancy with shading, come in and describe some of the shadow information. For this drawing, not entirely necessary. In fact, sometimes it can be better to rely on your contours to describe your image instead of relying on shading. Shading can make you feel better about stuff that's not working very well. Contours just force you to sort of accept what you did. All right, that does it for the hand. I admit I kind of like gnarly hands, so I always try to include a reasonable amount of the wrinkles and end up making the hands look a little older than they should maybe, but hey, that's all right. Accentuate these knuckles a little bit. Even though I don't see this so much in the reference image, I know that this hand is made up of knuckles and tendons, and so to a certain degree I can kind of play that up a little bit. And that's just basically like, if I were to do this really basic off to the side, we have just like edge of overly basic cylindrical finger there. Shape there. That's gonna give a sense of kind of a knobby thing with stuff that wraps around the sides, the overly exaggerated version. All right, let's look at a foot real quick. For me, feet are just a little bit less, I don't know what, intimidating than hands. I've got less mental baggage, I should say. If your head's in the right spot, then they're both the same because you're just drawing an object. That's not a hand or a foot. It's just a collection of shapes and things. Unfortunately, sometimes we can get in our own heads and be like, oh my goodness, a hand. We maybe don't do that so much with the foot. All right, what's my gesture of my foot doing? I always look for this, when I'm looking at the bottom of a foot like this, I look for a drop off the heel and a line down to the pinky toe. It's kind of an S curve through the heel. So I don't make the mistake of just drawing a big flat sausage with the toes coming out the bottom end. Lateral malleolus here. Pinky toe is somewhere down here, and then it's like a little smile across the bottom of the foot. If I come off the back of this calf, straight through the heel, it runs me into the S right there at the side of the foot and down to that pinky as well. That's a good relationship to get. And then somewhere in here, there's like this part of the foot. So this part kind of wraps around to the pinky toe and then there's a twist where this, I don't know, it's this part, but on the foot is showing up ball of the foot. Big toe's big, and then I've got this shelf, another toe here that overlaps. I'm using the elliptical massing method here of dealing with the toes, just so I can be as abstract as I feel like I'm probably gonna need to be with them. That's kind of the overall arrangement. Looks bonkers right now, but it'll get better. All right, I'm gonna measure a few things because it feels pretty stretched out to me, and I'd almost rather a stretched out foot than a crushed in one, but still gonna double check. Yeah, I'm stretched out. This should probably be down a good deal farther. Now's the time to do it if I'm gonna change something, and I guess setting a good example, I probably should. What needs to come down? This. That should be where the malleolus is, right across from this intersection. Let me make sure that intersection is correct. Width of the foot goes once, twice exact from the toe. Width of the foot goes once, twice exact from the toe, so I'm okay here. It's just that part. This has grown up too much. Going to deal with some basic shapes here so I can get things correct. All right, so a little better, moving that stuff down. These kind of wrinkles on the underside of the foot are really good to get. Kind of show the wrap, the twist and the wrap of that foot. Some nice S-shaped wrinkles down here in the foot. All right, I think I'm gonna call it there. So that's roughly what I would do dealing with drawing hands and feet. Make sure you're giving the time it needs. Practice in your sketchbook first. Hopefully that gives you an idea of sort of where you can go with this.